Welcome to episode 236 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G and 6G as well. Lately, we cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshul Sag. Let's get started with my first topic, and I want to talk about Reliance and their readying of a massive IPO in 2026. And Anshul, I wasn't aware of this, but I caught the news. So it's been long awaited. We've probably talked about it in the past, but it's actually happening early next year, is what news indicates. They're aiming to raise about $6 billion. And if they're successful in doing that, it's going to place the valuation near $112 billion. So we've talked about Reliance quite a bit, their disaggregated deployment of infrastructure, their huge subscriber base as well. And as I read through this article on RCR Wireless, it speaks to the fact that Reliance wants to use these funds to further expand its 4G network, focus on digital services, and position itself for global scale value creation, also focusing on enterprise services. But what's really interesting within the article as well, it talks about how a lot of analysts, including you and I, have had concerns that they're not monetizing what they're doing from a network perspective beyond access. And hey, listen, you can't fault them. This is a quandary for many mobile network operators, but this is going to be a massive IPO, and it's predicted to be one of the largest, if not the largest IPOs in India. So what do you think? I mean, do they need to be doing this to, further their network infrastructure? I mean, it's not going to necessarily unlock enterprise use cases. They're going to have to focus on that discreetly. But what are your thoughts, buddy?
Well, I don't really think they need the money. I really think this is more of an exit for some of the people who invested in Reliance Jio platforms.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, there were a lot of companies that were making investments. Maybe a year or two ago, we made a lot of announcements, whether it was Google or, just tons of companies were investing in geo platforms. So I think that this is really an exit for those companies, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
This might also put more pressure on geo platforms to be profitable or more profitable. I think that's really all this is. I don't really know if they need, I don't know how to put this. I feel like they can get their hands on $6 billion without having to IPO. So this is an exit for their investors first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're in a place where they have a next phase of their company, and part of that is going public. But again, this is still part of the Reliance family of companies.
Right.
So it's not like it's a standalone startup that doesn't have pretty big backing behind it. So I think this is more of a financial mechanism for investors to get their exit more than anything.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great insight. When you look at the subscriber base, I talked about it being massive. It's 500 million, right? And from a growth perspective, I believe that they would be better focused on developing things like enterprise solutions, applications. We've seen, SK Telecom and other Korean operators be really innovative with respect to moving beyond access and really focusing on use cases. And, there's an AI component to this as well. And I'm going to talk about that in my second topic. But it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of rolls out. There've been a lot of starts and stops here, so they've sort of put this off, and so now it appears to be coming to fruition. So it'll be interesting to see as we get into next year if there's another delay, if they push it out further. But hey, with that, you spent some time with Apple this week. They had their big event. They launched a few things, and I'll when I let you get through this topic, I'll share with you. I did buy something that was announced, and I want to talk to you about that as well. But why don't you take it away?
All right, I'm going to be real fast because there's a lot to go through. 4 new iPhones. It's the iPhone 17 series. The base model iPhone 17, as well as all other iPhone 17s, they're all 5G. The iPhone Air is a replacement for the iPhone Plus. It is
Mm-hmm.
5.6 millimeters thin, but it has the Pro processor that's in the Pro series, which is the Pro and the Pro Max. It also only has one main camera that's 48 megapixels. All the other cameras are 48 megapixels, and the Pro camera has now three 48 megapixel cameras. In addition to that, the watch, all versions of the watch now have 5G cellular, and I got confirmation that they are RedCap modems. So
Oh,
that's
cool.
going to be how they save power, but also deliver better performance than the 4G modems did.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, the Apple Watch Ultra will now have satellite connectivity, which is great for people who only take their watch out with them and don't
Mm-hmm.
have a phone. Then they also announced the AirPods Pro 3, which now have double the noise canceling, arguably way better fit in your ear, like the snuggest I've ever felt an AirPod in my ears,
Mm-hmm.
and a built-in heart rate sensor. So you'll be able to track your fitness without having to wear a smartwatch if that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
Um, in addition to all of that, the iPhone Air is the first chip or first phone from Apple that has an A19 SoC, a C1X modem, which is a new upgraded version of the C1 modem that they claim is twice as fast and 30% more efficient, and the N1 wireless chip, which is Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and Thread combo chip. So that is the most Apple Silicon iPhone that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe that the other iPhones still use a Qualcomm modem, but that is kind of the quick of it. I was, there, got to experience all the devices. iPhone Air is really, truly very premium feeling and looking device.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are some questions about battery life, especially since they were promoting an air, MagSafe battery attachment for it at the launch. So there's clearly some sensitivity to its battery life. But otherwise they've really refreshed the whole lineup, and they added a new camera across all the new iPhones called Center Stage, which is actually a square sensor. So it's most sensors are a 4:3 aspect ratio, but this is a perfectly square sensor. So that way you can get both landscape and portrait images on the same sensor without having to turn the phone. And that way it uses AI to detect faces and determine if you need landscape or portrait based on what
Oh,
people are in the shot and how they're being framed. So that's a pretty cool feature. I actually think that will be the most popular feature
yeah.
across all the new iPhones.
Yeah, for sure. There wasn't a lot of depth on Apple Intelligence, was there?
No, I mean, the only depth was they announced the new translation feature for the AirPods,
Yeah.
um, then the facial recognition for Center Stage, and that's kind of it.
Interesting. Yeah. So the product that I bought, I'm going back to the AirPod Pro 3. The reason why I really liked it, I mean, I think, the sensor is great for the health, measurement and that sort of thing. But the real time translation feature, I felt was going to, is pretty cool. And you're beginning, there are lots of inexpensive, earbuds out there that do this sort of thing. But that's what sort of sold me. So I ordered a pair. But what was interesting, I don't know if you caught this news. Apple is disabling that feature for customers in the European Union based on some sort of like compliance thing or privacy thing. Are you aware of that?
I did see that.
Yeah.
I forgot that they had done that
Uh-huh.
because it was announced after the launch.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Meta has had to restrict certain AI features in Europe as well,
Hmm.
and I think this will just be a continuance of, you know, regulatory uh, structures and requirements delaying certain features until
Hmm.
the companies can get them approved.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I'll still be able to use that feature when I travel to Europe. I'll be in London and Riga, and possibly Barcelona in December for HPE Discover EMEA. But yeah, as long as your Apple account is not registered in the European Union, you'll be able to travel with them, and be able to use that feature because hey, I speak a little bit of Spanish, but when it comes to everything else, man, I need some help. So, and it's going to be a lot easier than just holding the phone up, when you get lost somewhere.
Agreed.
So, but hey, buddy, I want to hit my second topic this week, and I want to talk about Ericsson, and this is their enterprise wireless group, formerly Cradlepoint. They're claiming the first 5G agentic AI framework that is designed to streamline enterprise network operations. So, again, they're claiming it as a first. They've had something called their Net Cloud Assistant, or ANA. But what this is going to do, it's not just necessarily a chatbot. So it's going to be a set of orchestration agent or agents and task agents that are focused on automating workflows, fault issue resolution. There's some network assurance that comes along with this, and it's going to be sort of a staggered approach. So you're going to see them release these agents over time, and we're beginning to see this when you look at just traditional enterprise networks with companies such as Cisco and Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and so, but they're claiming this is the first agentic framework that's based on 5G. So I think this is this is going to be something that we're going to see others follow. They are claiming that they feel like that they are ahead of Hewlett Packard Enterprise when you look at what they're doing with private wireless and Ethernet, as their acquired core infrastructure, and even made it a bold statement that they feel like that they have an advantage over Cisco when it comes to service provider network. So, but I got to believe that we'll see HPE and Cisco follow suit quickly. But you got to realize also that Cradlepoint's been at this a little bit longer. When you just look at private wireless and that sort of thing. So I think it's pretty compelling. I mean, what do you think? Is there an advantage for them to have first mover with respect to this capability?
Yeah, I mean, I think first mover is definitely a good place to have, but it doesn't really guarantee success, right? So I think there's a lot more factors other than first mover. It's good to show leadership in the space, especially considering Ericsson and Cradlepoint's history. But I don't really know, like, is this really changing the way people are operating their networks?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, how easy is it to port an agentic framework over a mobile network versus an enterprise network that's Ethernet based, and you've got routing and switching infrastructure attached to that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this all rolls out, and if they can command a true leadership position. And at the end of the day, leadership basically is defined by how much addressable market can you capture, how much top line revenue can you drive, and how much profitability can you realize from all of that. So it'll be something that I'll be keeping my eyes on over the coming months. So, but hey, let's go to your second topic, and this is pretty big news. So I think we've talked about AT&T and how they probably on our last podcast how they purchased quite a bit of spectrum from EchoStar. As Dish is beginning, that their ambitions to be the fourth, major MNO in the U.S. is fading pretty quickly. But SpaceX purchased just a boatload of spectrum, and you want to talk about that and the implications.
Yeah, so this was a $17 billion transaction.
Yeah.
And it was an acquisition of the company's AWS-4 and H-Block spectrum licenses, which pretty much makes up all of their spectrum, or most of it, most of what's left. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's $8.5 billion in cash and $8.5 billion in SpaceX stock. Ironically, this makes EchoStar's stock the easiest way to publicly purchase an investment in SpaceX.
Really?
Because they now hold $8.5 billion in SpaceX stock.
Okay.
And there's no other way to easily acquire or invest in SpaceX stock.
Well, because they're not a publicly traded company,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And EchoStar is.
Yeah.
And a lot of their valuation will now probably be tied to SpaceX. So that's an interesting situation.
It is.
I'm reading through the EchoStar release because that's kind of like the most clear-cut thing. What it says is that in connection with the transaction, SpaceX and EchoStar will enter into a long-term commercial agreement, which will enable EchoStar's Boost Mobile subscribers through its cloud-native 5G core to access SpaceX's next-generation Starlink direct-to-cell service. So now, EchoStar customers with Boost will also be able to use Starlink satellite direct-to-cell.
Hey, hold on. I thought T-Mobile had an exclusive arrangement with Starlink.
I guess that has run out.
Interesting.
Keep in mind, there's no specific date for when this is available, so
Okay.
there's a chance that might happen next year.
Yeah. If there's an
in addition to
exclusivity, like time-bound agreement with T-Mobile, right?
Yes, and in addition to that, EchoStar specifically states in their release that they anticipate this transaction with SpaceX, along with the previously announced spectrum sale, will resolve the FCC inquiries. So again, the FCC is the motivating factor in these transactions and has pushed them on EchoStar. And we all now know that the FCC has said that they are no longer pursuing EchoStar for what they were criticizing them for. And
which
then,
was spectrum squatting, right? And not using the spectrum for years. So
yes. And then, this gives them more money, more resources, and it will be very interesting to see what they will do with that.
Yeah.
Some people have claimed that they might launch their own direct-to-cell service. But that would seem kind of odd since now they own $8.5 billion of their direct competition's stock. If they were to do so, they would most likely be in their best interest to dump it if they choose to go down that path. But in general, this is a big win for SpaceX. I'm not surprised that SpaceX managed to get this deal, considering how close Elon has been with the Trump administration. And they've been one of the biggest vocal critics of EchoStar and the whole Dish business, including, their 5G network. So this is kind of not a huge surprise, but it does kind of put a nail in the coffin of Dish being the fourth carrier, and pretty much makes them a very clear MVNO now.
It looks like it's mainly going to be Boost, right? So it's really interesting, and to kind of dig a little bit just on that mobile first strategy. So John Stankey at AT&T was asked if he had any concern that he thought that SpaceX would be pursuing this mobile first strategy, given they own all of this spectrum now, and he doesn't think it's going to be an issue. And from his perspective, terrestrial is that's obviously the lion's share for mobile connectivity, and satellite is is great for gap fill and for rural and and that sort of thing. But this is all really, really interesting, and it's not surprising to me that the FCC is no longer pursuing EchoStar and Dish with because now they've all, to your point, all but have divested all other spectrum, and clearly AT&T has a demonstrated track record of using its spectrum, right, and not squatting on it. So I tell you what, you and I have been following this for years, and it's just what Dish embarked on was very aggressive. We've talked about Reliance and how successful they've been with a cloud native, cloudified core, highly disaggregated network topology, leveraging things like elements of Open RAN. But at the end of the day, Dish has had a lot of challenges, and I think maybe part of it is that there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen. At one point, like every infrastructure provider was claiming that they were working with Dish to roll this out. Everyone was super excited because it was a modern network, but they clearly haven't executed as well as Reliance has. So yeah, super interesting, man. But it'll be interesting to to watch this and see how it all unfolds over time. But with that, I'm going to hit my third and final topic, and you and I are both going to close with T-Mobile. From my perspective, I want to talk about, and I may have alluded to this, like after you and I attended the technology summit in Bellevue last month and in the analyst event, but T-Mobile is clearly moving past CBRS spectrum, in particular for neutral host, and it's really interesting because there have been companies like Solana and others that are focused on neutral host. CBRS, being the spectrum that's leveraged. You and I have talked about, some of the challenges with CBRS, just the amount of spectrum that's available. And also, there's general access licensing. There's, there is licensing where people have actually purchased PAL licenses to deploy it. In that scenario, it's been mainly, enterprises that are trying to do things like, provide connectivity to areas that are underserved by traditional infrastructure from a cellular perspective. But, this, from my perspective, this is a big blow to the whole notion of CBRS. And like, I've been following CBRS for years on Go. I thought it was amazing how they were democratizing access to licensed spectrum, because typically it's been very, very expensive, and the MNOs gobble it up. And so this is an interesting development because they're obviously, they're a major MNO. And I think part of it may be that they've seen some success with their advanced network solutions, which for our viewers and listeners that aren't familiar with ANS at T-Mobile, so this is T-Mobile for Businesses hybrid public, slicing the public network and private network deployment. And it's really, I think, become a model because it provides flexibility from not only a deployment perspective, but from a CapEx and an OpEx perspective to get private networks, out in the wild. And, as a result, this year we have seen, and I think we've talked about this on prior podcasts, we have seen an uptick in the adoption of private networking. So it's been like, it's not been a hockey stick. It's been a very, very long tail, but we're beginning to see, T-Mobile with ANS wins. We're seeing Solana with private wins. We're seeing HPE build its capabilities with private. Cisco has always been focused there as well. Dell, to a lesser extent, Dell's been very focused on telecom and driving OpEx and CapEx efficiencies within, the telecom space. But I mean, any thoughts on this? Is this a surprise to you?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think, they made the effort, but the truth is they have a lot of spectrum.
Right.
And
They did. A lot of 2.5, baby, right?
I think it would have made a lot more sense if they were in a place where they didn't have the spectrum, and CBRS kind of gave them a little bit more of that freedom.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I think they did make an effort, and it didn't go well for them. So I think they moved on.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, they're not in a spectrum deficit, right? Like some of the other MNOs were when they were deploying their 5G networks. And that's one of the reasons why, they're just kind of one or two steps ahead. First to standalone nationwide, first to their definition of what they envision to be 5G advanced, and they're using, low latency, low loss to really fine tune what they're doing from a slice perspective. They've launched T Priority, they've launched Super Mobile. So yeah, it's it's probably something that's basically, they've gotten to a point now where they've gotten so much momentum that even for like neutral host applications, it's not necessary for them. But with that, we're going to hit your final topic, and you're going to close us out with a T-Mobile update as well.
Yes, this one is also fairly new. This is actually an announcement that T-Mobile for Business will be providing 5G connectivity and telecommunication services for the LA 2028 Olympics. This is a broad coverage agreement where T-Mobile for Business will provide connectivity and data services for more than 110 locations in more than 40 venues across Southern California. I did some research and I found out that there's actually 2 venues for the LA 28 Olympics that are in Oklahoma City. Do not ask me why. I have no idea. But for some reason that happened for softball and some like whitewater sports. Everything else is in Southern California. The venues come as far south as the border of San Diego and Orange County at Trestles State Beach for surfing, and go all the way up, to the northerly parts of LA for a multitude of things. Most things are happening at stadiums, but they go really far east. They go really far north, like as far as the Rose Bowl. There's some aquatics in Pasadena. Lots of things happening at the Port of LA and at Long Beach, downtown LA. So it's literally all over LA County and beyond, right? Trestles is in the most southerly part of Orange County, which is very much not LA.
Right.
And they're going to do tennis at Carson and swimming at the whatchamacallit. The stadium who will not be named because none of the stadiums that have names are actually given their names on the LA 28 Olympics. So like Crypto Arena is just called Downtown LA Arena.
Oh god.
It's very, and like BMO Park where LA plays, they call it Exposition Park Stadium. So like, they won't give any of those sponsors their naming rights for the Olympics unless they pay for it. But yeah, it's really interesting because connectivity is a huge thing, and it's going to be super necessary for the Olympics. T-Mobile says they're going to deploy 5G ANS, which is their advanced network solutions, and they will connect more than 15,000 staff with push-to-talk services. So they'll be using Super Mobile. In addition to that, they're going to have reliable, high bandwidth, and highly secure connectivity for point-of-sale systems and event ticketing, which means they'll be using network slicing. And then there will also be a secure, low-latency connection between the International Broadcast Center for all of the broadcast operations and all the competition venues. So T-Mobile will be supporting over 100 broadcasters from around the world to cover the games. And they will also use the games as a showcase for all of their use cases for sports and beyond. So our friends at the Game Time Tech might want to cover this because T-Mobile is going to be one of the driving forces behind the LA 28 Olympics, and it's also for the Paralympics as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what kinds of experiences we get out of it, and hopefully more 4K transmissions, because I like watching things in 4K, and I feel like we're not getting enough 4K.
Yeah, I hear you. So for our viewers and listeners, like Game Time Tech Pod is done by 2 of our colleagues, Mel Baru and Robert Kramer. So go hit the More Insights and Strategy website if you want to learn more about that and subscribe to that. The final thing that I'll add, Anshul, to your topic is that this really demonstrates the power of a fiber-like connectivity from a throughput and from a latency perspective, right? So given the diversity, given just the distance, right, even beyond, like you were mentioning, beyond, the confines of Los Angeles proper, using 5G to be able to broadcast from all of these different venues, like, within Southern California, just really demonstrates the flexibility and the capability of what 5G brings. Again, a wireless but wire-like capability that supports broadcast. And we've talked about broadcast use cases and numerous times on our podcast as well. So this is going to be fun. It's a few years out, but it's going to be exciting to see just how performant this connectivity is with T-Mobile powering the LA Olympics in 2028. So, but hey, my friend, it's been another great podcast. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide insights on a specific 5G topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Will Contact, and I'm at Anshel Saad. We hope you have a great weekend, and please don't forget to rate us and subscribe.